Welcome to the Mac for the Blind Fall 2022 online course number 5. This is going to be all about word processing and using VoiceOver. I'm going to talk about word processors and options, but as far as the material goes, it's really applicable to any word processor unless I say otherwise. Microsoft Word, of course, has to be different in some respects because that just wouldn't be Microsoft. But by and large, when I get into text navigation and highlighting and verbosity, those things will count really regardless of what word processor you choose. Now, for the purposes of demonstration, I'm using TextEdit only because TextEdit is, in my opinion, the most convenient and easy of the word processors to use. I know everybody has this, well, not everybody, but a lot of people have this tendency or this belief that you have to use either Pages or a Microsoft Word to have a really solid word processor on the Mac. And that's true to a certain extent. If you do need high-end formatting, you're inserting text boxes, you're inserting images, and you're doing a lot of, out of the ordinary stuff. Like I have 4 college students I'm working with right now who do require more advanced or sophisticated word processing. So they have no choice. They have to use Microsoft Word because that's what their specific schools require. But if you're just like me and your everyday word processing, maybe you're just writing reports here and there, or just material that you're distributing for cited consumption, then you can get away with TextEdit. Sometimes people don't, they equate TextEdit to Notepad or WordPad in Windows. And TextEdit is a full-blown word processor. You can, double space, you can set margins, you can italicize, you can bold, you can justify, you can insert tables. There are a lot of things you can do with TextEdit, and it's a little bit more of a smoother interface, in my opinion, compared to Microsoft Word or Pages, where there are levels of interaction and there are some things you need to be aware of. Like, for example, with Microsoft Word, you have that lovely ribbon that Microsoft loves to use. And then in the Pages, you have the format bar, which is basically, in my humble opinion, Apple's take on the ribbon. But, TextEdit, you really don't have that. You do have some stuff in the toolbar you can mess with, and you can do stuff in preferences, but a lot of things that can be done in TextEdit, if you take the time to learn the keyboard shortcuts, you can definitely do as a VoiceOver user. So let's first talk about some things about word processing on the Mac that is a little different from Windows, other than the exception being Microsoft Word. Microsoft Word on the Mac doesn't work this way that I'm going to be describing, but in case you are going with TextEdit, or you're going to do Pages, or Nasus Writer or iText, there are other word processors, by the way, that are accessible with VoiceOver that you can use. Nasus Writer, I don't know how it's actually pronounced. iText. There are other ones, if you look on the Mac App Store, that are available. Sometimes people like to use different word processors for different reasons. Like I'll use iText sometimes because iText can open EPUB. And I think it opens PDFs, or it was able to. I don't know if it still does or not. And there used to be a great word processor called Bean. As far as I'm aware, the developer stopped supporting it for some reason. But the cool thing about Bean was, back in the day, it was like Pages in the sense that you could open Microsoft Word documents, and you can also export as Microsoft Word formats as well. TextEdit will allow you to open Word documents, but TextEdit will not allow you to export into Word format. You can save as an RTF, which is a universal word processing format that anybody, regardless of whether they're using Mac or Windows, should be able to open, and if they have to edit or whatever. Now, the thing about you'll notice with Pages or TextEdit is there are some features that Apple uses. For example, what's called the autosave and version history. Now, this may not be important to the average user. I've worked with, I guess, a half a dozen different published authors over the last 12, 13 years I've been doing this. A few of them actually have several books available in Audible and some other places.
Notes is actually a powerful word processor too. It does
Yeah,
just
that's true.
almost as much as text
Yeah,
edit with the keyboard shortcuts and everything too. So if you want something even more simplified, I would use notes and
yeah,
just,
that's true because Apple has definitely kicked up the features and the things you can do. Like people think of Notes back years ago where it was just a simple scratch pad,
right.
and it's
I do a
become
lot of
so
my
much
stuff in
more.
notes first and then paste it into Pages or text edit because I don't want to deal with that sidebar or the toolbar, the extra stuff that you have to find. So sometimes I'll do it in notes first, then paste it into Pages or text edit and then, make it more fancy than I need to. But text edit and notes, them are my first go-tos.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's funny. I haven't really looked at Notes more beyond just like using it for, because it syncs over to the iPhone. I love to put stuff in Notes that I also have available on my phone. So, like my Helen Keller clients, when I need their travel information, their address and phone number that I can pass along to my driver, I'll do that from Notes because I can then access it on the iPhone and I can share it with my friend's wife, who's my driver for my local jobs. All right. So, like I was saying about the autosave feature, what this allows you to do is basically the moment you start a new document in an Apple word processor. So I'm specifying here an Apple word processor, something that is Mac compatible and that I guess kind of it goes with what Apple used to call the modern document model. I don't know if they still refer to that. It used to be years ago. It was kind of like a big deal in the training guide that, Apple was referring to the new way of word processing as the modern document model. But I don't know if they're still touting that anymore. But as if word processors kind of conform to Apple standards, you will notice on the file menu. So when you open up TextEdit or Pages and you do a VOM for the file menus, go to TextEdit here.
TextEdit, daily.
And I'm going to go to the menu bar.
Menu bar, Apple.
And I'm going to VO
TextEdit,
right arrow
file.
to the file menu. And I'm going to go down and just listen to your options as I go down the file menu.
File menu, new command. Open ellipsis command, open recent, close command, save command, duplicate command shift, rename ellipsis, move to ellipsis, revert to, submenu, import from iPhone, export as PDF ellipsis, share, submenu, show properties command option, page setup ellipsis command shift, page.
So you'll notice there's some differences from what you might be used to in a Microsoft Word. One of the things that might jump out at you is duplicate. You might the move command, the revert command from the menu, from the file menu. These are things that you don't typically see in other word processors. So the revert command refers specifically to the autosave. So the moment you create a document, the system starts to reference that document. So even if you haven't named it, it's still technically called Untitled or Untitled 1 or Untitled 5 or whatever the case may be. And there is a hidden file in your root directory that actually keeps track of your autosave history. Now, the thing to remember is that as you continue to work on a document, whether you open it through Finder, you do Command S to save it, you close TextEdit or Pages, the system will save these reference points for your document that become part of its version history. Now, the version history is only maintained if you keep the file in the same location in which it was created. So in other words, if you have a specific folder that you use, that you create documents, as long as that document resides in that folder, it will continue to maintain a version history forever, how long you edit that document. However, keep in mind that it is not saved if you move it to a different part of your hard drive and then start working on the document, or if you share it with others. In other words, if you send it as an email attachment, or you use AirDrop to share the file with someone, when they open that document on their Mac, it immediately starts a version history anew. So in other words, they're not going to be able to see the changes that you've made to that document. So that is I guess the one thing you have to keep in mind about the autosave feature. However, as long as you're using it, you can always go back and make changes to, bring back, like, let's say, one of the things that happens to authors, according to the people that I worked with, is writer's block. And you may be writing something, and then you may go for a couple of days where you're just kind of going through the motions, and you add a chapter or two. And then one day you just kind of look at it and go, holy cow, what was I thinking? These last two chapters are complete garbage, or they really need to be changed. And I like the way it was going prior to this past weekend. So you could literally go back in time and you can look at past versions of that document, and you could revert it to a past form of the document, or you could cut and paste pieces from a previous document and paste it into the present document. So it's kind of a sub part of Time Machine. It uses the Time Machine feature, and it uses the Time Machine interface for being able to look at the version history. So that would be under the
print ellipse page, show prop, share, export, import from, revert to, submenu, revert to, last opened, last saved, last, browse all versions ellipsis.
So you have options in the revert.
Last saved, 10/10
saved version, and it will tell you the date. So
last saved, 10/10/22, 1:28 p.m.
Or
last opened, 12/11/22, 10:09 p.m.
So, these are and then you have
browse all versions ellipse.
Browse all versions. And this is where the Time Machine interface would come into play.
Login items, background.
So let's see if this will actually work, because this is a huge document that I have had for literally years in the same location. It's
browse all versions.
It's called Daily
Text edit.
It's called Daily Notes. And I just use it as like a scratch pad to write down telephone numbers or pieces of information that I then transfer to, appropriate places. But it's just become sort of a document I've had since, I think, 2011 or something like that. So
Daily window chooser menu, 4 items, system dialog, version browsing controls, new.
So I did a VO F2 2 times to go to the window chooser. Now, when you go down the window chooser,
version browsing controls, new.
Now, the version browsing controls is what you want to hit enter on.
Version browsing controls window, Sunday, December 11th button, Sunday, December 11th, 2022 at 10, invert, out button, dimmed button, current doc, done button, restore button, December 11th, 2022 at 10:09 p.m. In December 11th, at 10:09, out, Sunday, December, out a vertical slider.
So you have a vertical slider that you can change the date and literally go back in time. Now, this document's going to take a while to populate because, like I said, it's a massive document now at this point. But like I said, it's been around for over 10 years. So it's got a pretty massive version history.
Inverted Sunday, Friday, so December, Friday, December 9th, Friday, Tuesday, November 22nd, Tuesday, Thursday.
So I'm just VO down arrowing, through my past histories. And if I wanted to see this document for any given date, I would stop interacting with the
login items,
slider, and I would go back to the window chooser menu.
Out a vertical slider. Version window chooser menu, system version browsing control, daily notes.reft, current document.
So that would be the current document that I'm looking at. So it would show me what that document looked like back on November 11th or whatever the date was that I was just looking at. So this would then allow you to see the document exactly how it existed back at that time. So again, if you are writing a project, you're doing a project for yourself or collaborating with folks, you could literally go back in time and see how your document appeared, and then you could cut and paste things from the past, or you could simply revert it back to its, to what it looked like, X amount of days ago. So it could be a useful tool in word processing. Again, though, how many of us really would be using this on a regular basis? I don't know. I've used it a few times. I've been involved in writing some projects up and stuff, and I have gone back in time and I've looked at documents and how they appeared, a few days ago in the past or whatever. But it's not something that I use every day, but it's something to be aware of.
Edit text insertion at end of text. Int font.
Okay.
New line. New line. New line.
All right, so I just cleared the version history here window. So that's how your autosave works. Now, by default, what typically happens that you need to be aware of when it comes to the word processing is that when you close your word processor, the changes that you've made to a document are automatically saved by the autosave feature. So in other words, you don't get prompted to to fix those, to decide whether you want to keep those changes or not. I don't particularly like that. I like to be warned when I close a document that something has happened, and it gives me the ability to say, yes, I want to keep the changes, or no, revert it back to the way it was before. Now, in system preferences in older versions of Mac OS, you would go under the general button and you would find the checkbox in the general preferences way down the window. I do like to be warned when I close, and it's not everybody doesn't have to do this. I'm just letting you know where to go in case you want to change the behavior. So like I said, in system preferences in general, it's way down the window. There's a checkbox that will say prompt me when closing windows, and you just want to make sure that that's checked. In system settings in Mac OS Ventura, I believe it's also under general, but it's you kind of have to poke around in there and find it. And I'm still not perfectly sure where everything is. I did a course on system settings a few weeks back, and I kind of winged it because I'm still not 100% sure where to find things yet in system settings, but it is under general as well. You just have to interact with the scroll area, and once you select general from the table, and there's the checkbox as well, you can decide whether you want to be prompted when you close windows. Again, that's up to you. Cliff obviously doesn't care. Yeah, it is kind of window-esque. I do agree. But for me, because I have notes that I don't want to change, I just have a bad habit of doing that. Because I'll hit keys on the keyboard, I'll put punctuation marks, letters into things as I teach people, because that's just a habit of having Italian ancestry. We gesticulate quite a bit. So that's what you could do in case you'd like to change that particular feature. So that's how the autosave and the version history works. And you're only going to see this in Mac OS word processing apps that will conform to Apple's method. You don't see this in Microsoft Word. Microsoft Word still has their traditional file menu. Now, you also have the move and rename options as well. So you could.
Right, I was just about to point out too that if you do decide to do notes, Notesy there's not even an option to not autosave. That's not even an option. So, you can undo, but once you close that note, it's your changes are saved. It doesn't.
Yeah,
there's not even an option in general preferences or anything to tell you to, ask you if you want to save your changes. It's automatic in Notes. But
Yeah,
in
but
text edit and pages, you can change that as John said.
right. I mean, notes is really meant, it's not really meant. I guess the way Apple wants notes to be seen as, or whatever term you want to use. As much as they've added so much to it, I don't know if they're still viewing it in a way like a word processor per se. But they might as well, because they've added so much to it and made it very simple and straightforward to use. Okay, so I want to point out the move option from the file menu, simply because what happens with Apple word processors is, particularly if you've turned on iCloud Drive, by default the text editor pages is going to save your document in iCloud Drive under the particular folder. So if it's pages, it's going to be in the pages folder. If it's text edit, it's going to be in the text edit folder. So if you don't want that to be the case, or maybe you've just accidentally saved your document in a location that you didn't intend on doing, you can go into the move option and physically move that document to a different location. So you do have that as a way, instead of having to go through the Finder interface, locating the document, doing a Command C to copy it, going to its new location and doing Command Option V to move it, doing all that grunt work. You could simply use the move dialog in text editor pages or iText or whatever you're using, and just select a different location. Now, the duplicate option is basically a kind of a jazzed up save as. Something that's the beauty of the Mac, and why I prefer the Mac in a lot of ways, is you have multiple ways of doing things and making your life easier. So if you choose to do so, like I've spent a lot of times, and I'm not gonna spend any time criticizing whatever, but I've been doing a lot of Windows training for people, and it really does remind me why I jumped to the Mac in 2008. Anytime I have to go into Windows and start teaching people JAWS and Microsoft Word and all that stuff, I always find myself so thankful when I jump back to the Mac, because it's just, to me, the Mac is just more intuitive and just easier to find things. I guess if you've used Windows consistently for a long time, you'll probably be mocking me or whatever and telling me I'm wrong, and that's fine. But I just think that from the perspective of word processing, I just think that the Mac just does it a lot easier. To find things, to make changes to documents, to tag them, to lock them if you want to. It's just an easier process with the Mac, and my experience over the last. I think I started using Windows in '92. So we're pretty much looking at almost 30 years. I think maybe 93 was when I got was that Power Braille or whatever from Telesensory, and Windows 3.1.1. So I've been at it for a long time, is my point. So duplicate compared to save as. So duplicate is like a more jazzed up version of save as. So the difference is simply this: when you duplicate a document from the file menu or using Command Shift S, the system generates an exact copy of your document, but just appends the word copy in its title. So you have two document windows open: the original document and the copy. Now in the copy window, if you do Command S to save it, you then have the option to rename it, but it still remains as an original, duplicate. I should say a duplicate of the original. This is very good if you have like a set up a template system. So for example, when I write up training reports for state agencies for the end of month client reviews and stuff, I have a template that somebody from DSB of Washington kindly gave me years and years ago. And I use this as a template. So I will duplicate the original and then make the necessary changes that reflect the client that I'm writing about, in that. And it seems every state so far I've worked with has accepted the training report template that I've been using. So that makes it very easy. Save as I'm sure you know, simply replaces the original document with the copy of the document. So you don't have two document windows open. You just have a new document window that has the, I guess the, the save as version. And then again, you can obviously name it and do whatever you need to do. If you want to use save as in an Apple word processor, you can either do Command Option Shift S as the keyboard shortcut, or
Menu bar, Apple, text file.
if you go to the
Menu
file
bar, file,
menu,
file, open, close, command, save, command, duplicate, command, shift,
and on the
S.
duplicate option, if you hold down the option key,
Save as ellipsis, command, shift, option,
it
S.
switches over to save as, and then you can simply just VO space, and
Duplicate, command, shift,
and
S.
you'll get the traditional save as window in case that's something that's more appealing to you. I love duplicate. I don't use save as at all. I have to still use it in Word because there is no duplicate in the Word version for Mac. But I love to do this in text edit, as I said, with training reports, for example. So when you do a new document,
Edit text.
so I'm just going to do Command N here. So now we have a blank document. You can hear, there's absolutely nothing written at this moment. So Command N is going to allow you to make a new document. Now, the cool thing about text edit is the document window immediately opens. You're right in the document window. If you're using Pages or Microsoft Word and you do Command N, you have to go through the template chooser, select the blank template, and then, interact with the body of the document area. Because in Pages and in Word by default, when you open a document, you have a footer, a header, and a body section of a document. So you have to be aware of that when you want to type, to make sure that you're definitely typing in the body of the document. With text edit, once you open a document, you're right in the body. There is no header or footer area. So if you need that, then obviously you're going to have to use Word or Pages. But if you don't need a footer or a header, again, it's another reason why text edit, is a better option, or an easier option. May not be better, but it's an easier option. So we have the blank document here, and you can immediately
space.
Start typing. So once you start typing, you obviously will want to proofread. So it's a habit that I always have, and it's really not always necessary in text edit. It is definitely necessary in Pages and Word.
In edit text,
I make sure I'm always interacting with the body of the text before I start to do any sort of, editing and proofreading. Only because if you don't interact, you can find yourself navigating out of the document window and into other areas of the screen, which may not be a good thing. So I always make sure it's sort of one of these things. You just make sure that you always interact before you start. I guess the best way to say it is, don't assume because you can type, you also can proofread as well. For some reason, you can type just perfectly fine, but when you go to proofread, sometimes you're popped out of the window in Pages or Word. So you always want to make sure that you're interacting with the body, before you do that. So as far as navigation goes, there are really two ways to navigate or proofread or whatever you want to call it. You have voiceover commands and you have Mac OS commands. There is a little bit of overlap and there's some differences as well. Now, whichever method you choose is entirely up to you. I always teach clients both approaches because I don't know which way anybody is going to go. And if people will ask me, what do you use? I use both based on the situation, what I need to do when I'm navigating text. So the advantage to voiceover, in my humble opinion, is you do have more document navigation, particularly if you use a full-sized keyboard. I know a lot of people have laptops. The problem with the laptop is it lacks the home, the end, the page up and page down keys. When it comes to voiceover navigation, that could be advantageous to have them, particularly for sentence and paragraph navigation. You can kind of sort of do that a little bit with the laptop keyboard by way of adding the FN and the shift key to your arrows, but it's not a really easy solution. The other way you can handle this in a laptop environment is to create a keyboard shortcut in the keyboard commander for, read next and read previous. I should say go to next and go to previous paragraph, go to next and go to previous sentence. So that is a way you can create your own keyboard shortcuts in the keyboard commander if you really do a lot of text navigating and proofreading. So basically, we're going to start with the voiceover keys here. So the VO home key takes you to the top of the document. VO end will take you to the very bottom of the document. Now, VO shift right arrow
THIS
reads one character at a time forward. VO shift left arrow
SIHT
reads by character backwards through your text. If you drop the shift, think of shifty characters. You drop the shift, you can do VO right arrow.
This is a test.
Or you can do VO left arrow.
Test A is this.
So you can go backwards word by word. Now, if you do VO down arrow, you'll move down one line at a time.
This is a test.
Which I only have one line of text here, but VO up arrow, VO down arrow will move one line at a time through your document. So I'm just going to write a few other things here, just so we have more to work with.
Work new line. Navigating period. New line. This new line.
Okay, so I just added some paragraphs technically, or whatever, lines or whatever.
This is a test.
So if you do VO command page down.
Let's see how this works. New line. Let's try a paragraph for navigating.
So you can move by sentence forward. If you do VO command page up.
New line. Let's see how this is.
You'll go by sentence up. If you do VO shift page down.
New line. Let's try a paragraph. New line. How about this?
Is a paragraph navigation forward, and then VO shift and page up is backwards by paragraph. So the full-size keyboard gives you that advantage. Now, I believe you can do sentence navigation with the laptop keyboard with the FN shift VO. I think it's left and right arrow. I'm not 100% sure. It could be left and right arrow or up or down arrow. You can do sentence. I'm not sure if you can do paragraph navigation with a laptop keyboard easily. Again, the solution to that, as I did on my MacBook Pro, is I just came up with the keyboard commander shortcuts using the number row. So 1, 2, 3, and 4 from the number row. If I do right option 1 or right option 2, I will go to previous or next sentence. If I do right option 3 or right option 4, I go to previous or next paragraph. So you can do that as an alternative. You also can use the quick nav rotor if that's another thing. If you fell in love with quick nav, it does work in word processing as well.
Quick nav on. Paragraphs, sentences, lines.
So I'm just turning the rotor.
Misspelled. Lines, sentences, paragraphs, navigation.
So you can definitely navigate as well using your quick nav. So that's another method you could use if you don't want to use the voiceover actual keyboard navigation commands, because sometimes people will say, oh, there's just so many keys involved, which always makes me laugh because it's not like JAWS or other Windows screen readers don't have a million keys involved in their shortcuts either. So
quick nav off.
Just going to turn it back off again here. So the other thing you can do with voiceover that you can't do with Mac OS keyboard commands is what's called reading commands. So in other words, you can kind of see what's going on without physically moving your cursor. So
this is T.
I'm on the top of the document, so this is a test. So if I do VOC, hello.
T.
Okay, why isn't that working? Oh, okay.
This. THIS.
VOW works, but VOC doesn't.
T.
Oh, there it goes.
Tango.
All right. So VOC will read the character. If you do it a second time,
T. Tango.
it will read you the character phonetically. So VOC reads the current character that the cursor is on, and then the second time reads it phonetically. If you do VOW,
This.
it says the word. If you do it a second time,
THIS.
and
Tango. Hotel. India. Sierra.
third time will spell the word. So VOL will read the whole line.
This is a test. Let's see how this works.
Okay, so that's the entire long. VOS will read the sentence.
This is a test.
VOP will read the whole paragraph. So if you just remember those first letter, for each thing, sentence, paragraph, line, VO and that letter will give you access to reading by that chosen segment without physically moving your cursor. So if you want to get like context where you are in a sentence or where you are on a paragraph without physically moving from your location, those read commands can be very helpful. So that's some of the things you can do with the voiceover navigation. Now, Mac OS, if you look up, the interesting thing is if you look up, and I have a link on my website to the latest, I don't think I have Ventura. I got to go and add Ventura. But there is a list of overall Mac OS keyboard shortcuts. And if you kind of read through them, they make reference to a whole bunch of different text navigation commands by way of the keyboard. Well, unfortunately, most of them don't work. And I'm not sure if it's a mistake or they just don't know, or it could be my particular laptop or whatever. But most of the keyboard shortcuts you will discover don't work as advertised. So I will go over the ones that I do know work for sure. So moving by character is very easy. Left or right arrow by itself.
THIS. SIH.
If you add the option key, so option left arrow, option right arrow.
This is a test. Test A is this.
That will do word. Okay. Option up arrow, option down arrow will take you to the beginning or end of the current paragraph. Command up arrow, command down arrow will take you
New line
to the top or the bottom of the document. It's basically the same as VO home, VO end. If you do
this is a test.
VO right arrow, command right arrow
Works.
will take you to the end of the sentence your cursor is currently in.
This.
And if you do command left arrow, that takes you to the very beginning of the sentence that your cursor is currently in. So those are some of the Mac OS commands that you could use, which are a little less key intensive than voiceover, but not, in my opinion, as useful, especially if you want to navigate and proofread by, sentence. I do a lot of proofreading and stuff for reports, and I like to be able to read by sentence and paragraph just to make sure that I've actually typed something that's coherent. So I prefer the Mac OS keyboard commands for that. But for general, just like going through documents, sometimes it's easier, obviously, to do some of the Mac OS commands. So that's why I teach people sort of both approaches, because this way you can make your choice, whether you like, the voiceover method, or you like the Mac OS, or you want to be like me and sort of kind of use them both accordingly. Now, once you have your document, you want to save it. So Command S, just like Control S in the Windows world, Command S will open the save dialog.
In dialog, save untitled.rtf.
So by default, it gives you an untitled blah, blah, blah. You can overwrite this simply by typing the name of the document. I'm not particularly interested in saving this, so
Tags.
I'm just going to go to the right, VO right arrow.
Tags. Tag
Cliff
editor.
has joined
Edit.
the meeting.
So there you have your tags, as Cliff alluded to earlier. Now, tagging is something that I started to kind of get my mind wrapped around years ago when they introduced it. I don't remember if it was Mojave or something like that. It can be very useful if you're a very organized person because you can have multiple tags. You can tag items in a variety of different ways. Um, and really help you search for documents or be able to kind of sort your documents in a lot of different ways. There is a take control book. I know a lot of you guys who've been on other calls with me know that I often do bring up the Take Control book series from takecontrolbooks.com, and they do have a take control book on using tags and organizing your Mac. I don't remember exactly the title off the top of my head, but if anybody's interested, you can just write me a quick email and I'll look it up. I think I own it. I usually own most of the cool stuff that they have for the Mac and iOS. In fact, I would recommend checking out that website. They have holiday specials going on, discounts, 10, 20% off of books. And the books cost $5, $10, maybe $15 at the most. They're not designed for technically people who want technical jargon. It's really for the average user. Very straightforward and well written by experts who've been using Macs and iDevices for millennium at this point. So you definitely want to check out. They have a whole bunch of different stuff. Take control of Mac OS Ventura, take control of iOS 16, take control of Pages, take control of Numbers. You can find tons of their books, but they definitely have one on tags and organizing your Mac.
Back, dimmed button.
So I'm just going to VO
Forward,
right arrow
dim
here.
column view menu button.
So then you have your column.
Change the item, downloads, where, pop-up button.
You eventually come to a pop-up menu. Now, what this does is this keeps track of A, the last folder in which you've saved a document, and B, it keeps track of the last 6 or 7 folders. So you can quickly access folders if you are the type of person who has maybe a few different locations they like to save their documents. So you could use this pop-up menu to choose any of those, as long as it's under like 6 or 7, I forget what it is, you'll be able to find that. But if you need to, you can keep going to the right.
Show less options, sidebar, table, downloads.
You just like a Finder window, you have the sidebar,
vertical folder shared with files, column view,
and the browser. So if you needed to choose a specific location other than the one that's being shown in the pop-up menu, you could go use the sidebar to pick your documents folder, your iCloud drive, and then you could pick the browser then to navigate to a subfolder within the structure and choose that. And if you keep going to the right,
search text field, file format, rich text document, file format.
File format. RTF is the default.
New folder button.
You could choose to do a new folder if you wanted to.
Cancel button.
Cancel.
Save button.
And save. So it's a pretty standard save dialog. When you go to save your files, and then once it's saved the first time, and anytime you do Command S, it will just create a reference point and just save the document again. The one thing, again, I'm not mocking Windows before anybody thinks that's the case. The one thing you have to remember on the Mac, you don't have to continuously hit the save command like you do in Windows with Word, because you develop a sense of paranoia as far as Windows crashing, your screen reader crashing, and losing content that you've typed. On the Mac automatically saves your changes anyway as you type along. So even if you get a power failure or the battery completely dies on your laptop without you knowing, your document is going to be saved anyway. So you don't have to, my point is, you don't have to continually keep hitting, the save command over and over again. It's funny, to this day, I still find myself occasionally doing that, just out of habit from many years of using Windows word processors.
As a matter of fact, I've had instances where my Mac would crash, and when I started back up, that text edit document is still open.
Yeah, well, because the other part of the resume feature is that the Mac will remember what you were doing prior to shutting down, or if you had a crash. So you will usually reopen all your work the next time around. And I love this feature. I know some people don't like it, but for example, I keep certain documents open in TextEdit especially if during the week when I'm working with clients that, let's say, I'm on certain iOS or Mac material, or when I'm teaching the ACSP course, I like to leave certain things open all the time. So anytime I fire text edit up, I know for sure those document windows will also automatically open as well. And I'll sometimes do that with Safari, with web pages that I've been like looking at a lot and want to go back to, especially now with the holidays coming up with my nephews and my niece, and I'm getting their everything seems to go up in price every year, but all the stuff that they're looking for Christmas, I keep Amazon open and Overstock and all these other websites. So I love to have the ability to just keep reopening them. So you can basically do the same thing with text edit or pages. I do not believe Microsoft Word, though, will reopen the documents that you've left open. At least from my experience of using Word, I always have to reopen the document. Now, one little trick you can do in any word processor, including Word,
Edit text in
I just close the dialog here because, as I said, I don't want to save this document, is if you go to the File menu
menu bar, Apple, tech file,
and under File,
new open ellipsis, open recent,
you
submenu.
do have an Open Recents. This will keep track of the last 10 documents that you have worked on. So if it's a document that you have consistently been going back to, you can pretty much be assured it's going to be in this list. So it's another quick way to open a document. And again, I use this in Word because, as I said, Word doesn't keep the documents open that I was working on. So it's a good way for me to be able to go back and reopen something that I need to reopen when I'm working with students. Okay, so that's the save dialog. So I'm just going to talk about some other word processing stuff just in case it's of interest to you. So highlighting text. You may need to highlight text to copy, to paste, copy and paste or delete chunks of your document if you're kind of editing things. So the voiceover way of doing it, again, it's a little step oriented. It's not as straightforward, but you can be a lot more surgical, in my humble opinion, when you're trying to highlight specific parts of a document. So you have to kind of do a 4-step deal here. So you do VO enter.
Deselect, open recent, submenu, edit text insertion.
Get back out of here.
New line, this is a test, ruler, edit, is, select.
So you go, it'll say select. So you use the VO navigation commands as you need them. So in other words, if I do VO right arrow.
Is a test. Let's see how this works.
It's highlighting as I go along because I hear that little swishy sound. Now I also can verify what's highlighted with VO F6.
No selection.
I don't know. Why is it saying no selection?
No selection.
Or maybe because I'm still in selection mode. I haven't finished selecting here. So you just use your VO navigation commands. And when you're done, you just do VO enter again.
Is a test. Let's see how this works. Selected.
And it will read again what you have selected. And then you can immediately delete it, or you can do Command C to copy it, whatever the case, might be. But because you're using the voiceover navigation commands, you can highlight, as I said, a little bit more surgically, I guess. That's the term I use. I don't know if that's the proper term to use, but you get basically everything that you're trying to copy or delete. Now, you can do this more easily with the Mac OS.
This is a test. T.
So if I just hold down the Shift key and I do the word navigation, option right arrow.
This is a test. Selected.
It will tell me it's selected as I go along. So again, you can hold down the Shift key and you can navigate by line. You can navigate by character. You could do Shift Command down arrow to highlight everything from the cursor position down to the bottom of the document, or you could do Shift Command up arrow to highlight everything from the cursor position to the top of the document. So again, what you choose to use in your given situation is entirely your preference. Whatever you find easiest to do, whatever you find easiest to remember, which as those of us know who get older, it's really a matter of sometimes what you can remember. So, that's why why I like to teach people multiple methods of doing things, because some people will kind of latch on to one way, while others will be like me and will just kind of use I like to call it tools in the toolbox. So you just reach into the toolbox and you use, the whatever is appropriate to you. So that's why I like to teach people all the different various options. Now, you also have voiceover verbosity commands, and the verbosity commands you can use to change the way voiceover will present the text to you. Now, there is a whole master list of text verbosity commands. If you open up the voiceover utility, which I'm going to do with VOF8.
Opening voiceover utility. Voiceover utility, window, utility categories, in verbosity.
So I interacted with the table and I VO down arrow to verbosity, and I'm going to stop interacting.
Out of utility categories.
And I'm going to VO right
speech,
arrow.
Select Braille tab, text tab, 3 of 5.
So the text tab is the third tab of the 5 in verbosity. I'm going to VO space.
Selected.
And I'm going to keep going to the right.
Announcements tab, 4, hints tab, punctuation.
So the first verbosity option that you can change is punctuation.
Some, punctuation, pop-up button.
So this is a drop-down menu, so you can do some, most, or none, whatever your case may be when you're reading. As a voiceover user, as a blind person, and you're proofreading a document, it may be important to have some or all the punctuation read so that you have an idea if you've made any extra punctuation or mistakes. Now I'm just going to go to the VO right arrow to kind of give you an idea of the different options that you have. And again, this is the full-blown verbosity setting. So there is another way we can do this. I'm going to show you in a minute, but I just want to point out that this has got all of the verbosity options.
Repeated punctuation, spoken with count.
So repeated punctuation, spoken with count, you can have it just say period, 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 period a million times, or you can have it do nothing.
Repeated spaces, do nothing. Repeated spaces.
So repeated spaces, this was added in Ventura. So if you put extra spaces in your document as you're proofreading it, you can have it tell you,
menu check, speak with count.
Speak with count.
Play tone.
Play tone.
Check mark, do nothing.
Or do nothing.
Speak with count. Speak with count.
So
repeated
I just
space.
selected speak with count, which is typically what I do when I'm proofreading, because I have a habit of putting extra spaces into documents and stuff when I'm inserting and deleting stuff.
Leading tab and space indentation. Do nothing. Leading.
So again, leading tab and
do nothing. Leading tab and space indentation.
Space indentation. You have options there to play tone, do it with the count.
While typing, speak characters and words.
Then you have typing mode, which is typing echo, I guess is what it's called in Windows. So, you can I have words and characters, but you can do characters only, words only, or nothing, which I don't understand if you're blind why you would have no typing echo at all, but some people prefer
when
that.
moving the cursor. Speak text, the cursor passes. When moving the cursor.
This is for editing text, which I will discuss shortly. This is the standard Mac OS way that
when speak text, the cursor passes.
So it'll be speaking the text that the cursor passes, and I'll explain the difference in that from Windows in a few moments here.
When text attributes change, do nothing. When text attributes.
So text attributes change.
When encountering a misspelled word, play tone.
These are all drop-down menus, so you pop-up menus. So you basically VO space and choose your options from these menus.
When encountering a link / it's play tone. When encountering.
And this is all preference. If you notice, I do a lot of play tones or do nothings unless it's something important. I like as less chatter with voiceover as I possibly can get. Only in certain instances do I like to hear, like for the spacing, as I'm proofreading.
Read numbers as words. Read numbers as button.
Words or digits. So
choose how to speak number.
536 or 536, for example. So if you're doing math equations, you might want to change this to digits, for instance.
When reading a capital letter, play tone.
So when reading a capital letter.
When deleting text, change pitch. When deleting text.
So when you're deleting text, I just have it change pitch. It goes to a much higher speaking pitch when I'm deleting over characters.
Help button.
And then you got the help at the end of the preference window here. So that's the full-blown verbosity settings that you could go into the voiceover utility and change. However, I'm just going to do a Command Q.
Text edit. Untype.
Go back to text edit. If you do VOV, so Control Option V or Caps Lock V, if you're using Caps Lock as your preference, as your voiceover modifier choice.
Speech verbosity level menu. 3 items. On item medium.
So you'll notice that this little pop-up window will kind of appear. And if you use your left or your right arrow by itself, so I'm just going to use the right arrow.
Braille verbosity level menu. 3 items. Punctuation menu. 3 items. Typing echo menu. 4 items. On item characters and words.
So you can change by going up or down arrow on any setting.
Words. Characters. Nothing. Characters and words.
So you can just easily make changes just using your single arrow key.
Text attributes menu. 3 items. Numbers menu. 2 items. On capitals menu. 4 items. On item play tone. When status changes menu. 3 items. On item play tone. Speech verbosity level menu. 3 items.
And it circles back around again. But you notice a lot of the ones from the main voiceover utility are missing. So this is kind of an abbreviated list, but I guess what Apple considers to be the most important verbosity choices that you might need in a document. So once you've made your changes, you just simply hit escape.
Stop adjusting speech verbosity level.
And it will go back to where you were prior. So those are the two ways that you can you can deal with verbosity. So this is again up to you. As I said, I like less chatter. Some people might like to be here. They want to hear everything as they type or as they proofread. Every time it says capital letter or whatever link or whatever, that's fine. Everybody's different. So you have the ability to kind of customize voiceover to work for you. Now, as far as inserting and deleting, this is different than Windows. I'm sure we have a lot I'm looking at the names of the people who are in this presentation, and I know some of you guys have been Mac users for a long time and you've kind of gotten used to this, so you know what I'm talking about. But for those of you who might be new to the Mac or considering switching, you got to remember that dealing with text by default is different on the Mac side than it is in Windows. So everything to the right of the cursor is how Windows generally works. On the Mac, it's different. It's the last character that the cursor passed over that is spoken. So what I mean by that...
This is a test. T.
So I'm on the...
T. H. I. S.
So as I'm going along here, the cursor is passing over these letters. So let's say...
S. 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 I.
I'm going to delete the letter I. So we have...
T. T. H. S.
So we have THS now. Now, let's say I wanted to insert the letter I where it's supposed to go. So if we start at the beginning of the word, now I'm just going to the right.
T. H.
Okay.
S.
So where you put the letter I is going to depend on what direction you're going. S. So if I'm going forward, when I hear the letter H,
T. H.
I can put the letter I.
S.
And it will be put between the S and the H and the S where it belongs. So in other words, as I'm going to the right, as long as that letter is spoken, that last letter is spoken, that's when I would insert my I. If I was going backwards, so I'm just going to delete the I here for a second. Oops.
I. S.
Yes.
H. T. H. S.
So if I'm going backwards and I just hear
space S,
the letter S, I can insert the letter I right there because the S was the last letter it passed over. So now my cursor position is technically between the H and the S.
I.
So now
I S.
I have this. So direction is, my point here is direction matters. You have to be aware of what direction you're going. If you've used iOS, by the way, even though you're doing flicking up and down and such, this is still the same principle. And from my understanding, and I can be corrected, but I'm pretty sure I've heard sighted people tell me that this is how the cursor behaves from the sighted interface as well. So, the Mac is more close, I guess, than how a sighted person, when they're editing text, deal with it. And this same principle, by the way, is also for deleting text as well. You want to make sure you know what direction you have moved or passed over the text before you start deleting. What I typically suggest to people is do a test document. Just open a blank text edit document like I just did and just type jibber jabber and then just practice inserting and deleting until you get the hang of it. Now you can go into the voiceover utility verbosity settings and change the option to be like Windows, where it's to the right of the cursor. But I really try to encourage Mac users, especially if you're switching, don't do that. Learn the Mac way of doing it. It's not, it's not difficult. You just got to give it a little bit of time. Yeah, did it trip me up in the beginning a little bit? Yes, it did. But, now I'm having the opposite issue where when I'm working in Windows, I'm trying to do things the Mac way. So that's kind of tripping me up at the moment. But that's basically how inserting and deleting text works. Now, the last thing I want to talk about as far as document, manipulation, text manipulation goes is spell checking. Now, spell checking does not work in Word as it does in Mac OS word processors. Microsoft has its own spell checker. You have to go to the Tools menu in Microsoft Word. I believe it's Option Command L as the keyboard shortcut, but don't quote me on that. But if you go to the Tools menu under spell checking, you can start there. If you're used to the F7 dialog in Windows, that's what you're basically going to get on the Mac side. Now, for Mac word processors, there's a few ways you can spell check. The universal spell checker for Mac OS is the Command Shift semicolon or Command colon, and that opens up the equivalent of the full-blown, the spell checker that you would see in Windows. And I don't think I misspelled anything here.
New line.
So
New L.
let me
E.
see if I can.
E. T. Right at space T R Y space A space P A R A A O G R A P R F.
Let me just see if this is going to work here.
Paragraph.
Okay. All right. So, you can either do the universal spell checker with Command Shift and semicolon or Command colon. And it will be like the Windows universal spell checker where you have the misspelled word and the list of alternatives, and you can use the tab key to go through your add to dictionary or ignore or change, etc. I personally find the spell checker dialog to be inconvenient because it requires so much navigating and typing, but that's me. That doesn't mean everybody else has to do it the way John does it. So Command Shift semicolon will open up the spell check dialog and allow you to go through your document in the traditional way. I like
This is a test.
The Command semicolon. So I drop the Shift key. Command semicolon is highlight next misspelled word.
Paragraph. Selected.
So you notice it says paragraph selected. If I do immediately a VO Shift M, which is the equivalent of right-clicking.
Menu.
I get my
paragraph.
Alternatives.
Paragraph. Ignore spelling. Learn spelling. Look up. Paragraph. Translate. Search with Google. Cut.
Everything is right from this menu. So I don't have to really do a lot of navigating. I can simply select something from this context menu. So obviously,
look up, learn, ignore, borrow, paragraph.
I could just hit enter.
Edit text,
and it will replace paragraph
selected.
With paragraph. And I can go through the whole document, basically doing Command semicolon and do the same process with VO Shift M. You do have, as long as you haven't turned it off, the autocorrect, or like my friends and I love to affectionately call it, the auto incorrect, where you'll also have words identified with sounds as you go navigate through your text. And it's a little tricky. If you hear a misspelled word and you get to the last character of that word, you'll hear a little popping sound. And then if you immediately hit down arrow, there's a floating window with the spelling alternatives. Um,
Paragraph. T. Right single
I'm going to
quotation mark. Right.
see
Right. S. Try. A. Full paragraphs.
if I
P.
can
A.
get this
R.
to work, because
A.
anytime I try to
A.
do this with my
O.
clients,
Paragraph. New line.
it doesn't work, and I get
LT
embarrassed.
apostrophe S. Try. A. Paragraph. P. A. R. O. G. R. A. P. H.
No, it's not doing it, of course. Technically, it's supposed to make a popping sign
Space. Space. H.
at the end of the misspelled word, and you can immediately hit the down arrow key and have a floating window of suggestion.
Paragraph. New line.
Yeah, it's not. It's of course it's not going to work when I need it to work. But as soon as I get off this call and I look at it, it's going to work the way it's supposed to, because that's just what it does. But you'll know there's a popping sound that you'll hear when you reach the last character. And if you got to be quick, you got to hit the down arrow right away. That's why I don't really like that method. I just think command semicolon is just very straightforward. It highlights the next misspelled word, and it doesn't matter where you start in the document, it'll come back around again. So I just like that particular command because I am not the world's best speller. I've certainly improved, but as a Braille user all my life, and I got into the world of having to type and use computers, I discovered just how bad my spelling was because I'm so used to Braille contractions and reading Braille and not thinking about words being totally spelled out.
And these commands are universal to any word processing on the Mac, correct?
Yes. Yeah. So as long as it's not Word, because Word, as I said, if you try these commands in Word, they don't work. So you have no choice but to go use their wonderful little spell checking deal. Now, I don't know if Microsoft Word. Let me preface this by saying it this way: Word and Excel and PowerPoint have gotten a lot better as far as accessibility with VoiceOver over the years. I give Microsoft a lot of credit. Their accessibility team has worked very hard, and they've been a lot of improvements. But I don't know, I have to go and look again. But the last time I used their spell checker, it was still a little flaky with VoiceOver. It was not really working. Like I wasn't seeing the
login items. Background items added.
So I'm not sure if they've fixed it because like I said, I only use Word when I'm teaching people, and usually the spell checker is just something we talk about. I usually don't end up demonstrating it. So it's been a long time since I've tried to use the spell checker. So I'm hoping that Microsoft has fixed that particular aspect of using Word. But otherwise, you have to either go to the tools menu and under spell checking, or as I said, I think it's Command Option L. For some reason, that command is sticking out in my brain, which is very strange. I tend to remember really obscure keyboard commands, and then ones that are very obvious, I find that I have to look up sometimes because I just forget them. All right, so again, this was really just a crash course on word processing. There is obviously far more layers involved, and a lot of stuff that it may be specific to word processors themselves. So for example, Pages and dealing with the format bar in Pages. What I will say is this: Pages is accessible. It's completely accessible. You just have to know where to look for things. And sometimes you just look through the menu. Sometimes you look on the format bar. I know people have asked me about doing a lesson on Pages. I am not an expert. I know enough to be dangerous. I do have a couple of audio tutorials that deal with Pages, but I will tell you the source that I used, as far as I'm concerned, it's still a great resource, even though it's been around for a few years now, is Ann Robertson's My Mac VoiceOver Pages, her book. I think you can still find it in a variety of locations. That really covers, I don't know if she's updated it or not. I haven't been in contact with her in a while, so I don't know where it stands as far as like if there's been any changes, significant changes to Pages that make that book outdated or not. I don't think so.
I also have me and Matt did a tag team tutorial on my More with the Mac class on YouTube on our Third Up YouTube channel. It's under the playlist More with the Mac 2022, I think it's called. There's a variant. We go into the the format menu and all that kind of stuff. So if you want to, more
Yeah, that's
extensive
another
thing on pages.
resource. Yeah, definitely. Because you know what it is? I'm always asked about pages and numbers and are there resources? So yes, so there you go, right there, Cliff and Matt's resource. There is a take control book on pages and numbers, but it is not written from the accessibility standpoint. So let me be strict, be completely clear about that. It is just how to use pages and numbers. And there also is if you're really a more tech savvy person, there is an Apple training guide for pages and numbers that you can purchase as well through the peachpitpress.com website, peachpitpress.com. If you really want to be a geek about pages and numbers in Keynote. I got the book and started reading it, and my head started spinning, so I kind of stopped because I was like, do I really need to be this much of an expert on it? But if you're really looking for information, Cliff has the YouTube channel. You got Ann Robertson's book. You have my starter tutorials, part 1 and 2. So there are a lot of resources on pages, and I'm probably going to talk to Cliff about doing in the spring. We'll do a joint pages thing in the spring and kind of also add some resources as well. But Word, again, I will say the Microsoft accessibility pages. I do have keyboard shortcuts for Word for Mac. I do have keyboard shortcuts, a list, I should say, for the Mac version of Word, the Mac version of Excel, and the Mac version of PowerPoint. So if you want that list or all those lists, send me an email to ask me, and I'll send them to you. I just basically took them off the accessibility Microsoft accessibility website. If you do an internet search for keyboard shortcuts for Word for Mac or keyboard shortcuts for Excel for Mac, you'll find the same material that I downloaded.
I was about to say I did the same thing when I started working for Target back in August. I have to use Windows, so I had to know what I was doing over there. So I had to download those same shortcuts.
Me too. So there you go if you need them. But Word is a critter of its own. Again, I know enough to be dangerous, but I'm not by any an expert, because I've been asked privately by a couple of people if I would do a Word for Mac course. I'd love to be able to do it. I don't like to do courses if I don't feel that I'm going to do it justice for people. I don't want to shortchange people, and I don't want to end up giving anyone the wrong information. So there's all your word processing basics. Please, if you have any questions at this point, let me know if you guys have any questions.
Zoom.us. Zoom.
Do you have to interact the text edit in order to make the...
Yes, any of those navigation commands, just
especially if you have quick nav on.
That's the other thing. Yeah,
if you have quick nav off, then those navigation will work. But if quick nav is on, you have to interact.
Right. So just keep that in mind as well. But it should work fine.
And what were the commands? Is there Mac commands for the sentence by sentence? Or
only Mac. The only Mac OS is jumping to the beginning or the end of the sentence with command left or right arrow. They don't have any sentence. If you look on their web on the keyboard shortcuts, there is keyboard shortcuts listed, but they don't work.
Okay, so yeah, I remember that there was something about page down or
they don't work.
Yeah.
As far as I've been able to find and determine.
All right, so you used like the VOS to go sentence
That's to
by
read.
sentence?
VO command page down and page up will navigate by sentence. If you don't have a full-size keyboard, there is a combination you can do with the Shift and FN key. I think it's VO Shift FN left arrow or right arrow, I think is sentence. I'm not 100% sure. But as I said, the ultimate solution is to go into keyboard commander and just create something easy, as I did.
Yes, that's a really good idea.
Yeah, like I said, I did 1, 2, 3, and 4 from the number row. So it's very easy to remember.
Yeah, and use it with the option key?
Yes, right option key.
That's a great idea. And then you read sentence by sentence.
Let's say if with your example of saving different files, like
locations,
using duplicate to save a file for a person, is, I'm not doing that now, but let's say I was, and I had this thing I was using as a template from state of Texas where I live, and then I had student 1, student 2, and student 3. Do I need to have is there a way to lock the thing that I'm using as a form so I won't
Yes.
accidentally write over it, but I could still
Yes,
use
there
it,
is.
or do I have to go to Pages for that?
No. You can lock it within the document itself. In TextEdit, I don't know where it's done in Pages, but in TextEdit, you actually stop interacting. Let me see if I can go over
Text
here and
edit.
let you hear it.
Participant.
So where the title of the document is, I VO spaced. So I went all the way to the left. I stopped interacting with the document area and I went all the way
Daily
to
notes.
the left.
Tags. Tag where. Tech lock name. Locked. Unchecked. Checkbox.
So there's your locked
Oh.
checkbox. So you could simply check the box and lock the document right from this window.
So I could open it and lock it. That way I don't have to deal with having a password for it or anything.
Right.
And
It's just, what will happen is if you try to edit the document, a little like dialogue will pop up and tell you to unlock the document if you want to make changes or duplicate it if you want to, have a version that you can change. And you can do it in Finder as well. If you have the document in Finder and you do a Command I for the info window, there's a checkbox in there to lock it too, if you want to do it that way. So thank you very much for attending. But I will talk
Thank
to
you
you guys
guys.
next week.
All right, we'll
for
see you
those
guys
of
next week.
See you later, guys.
Remember, for all Mac, iOS, and any kind of Apple training, visit macfortheblind.com. John Panarese has some free courses and some reasonable paid courses. You won't be disappointed. See you next time.